Are you all about taking collaboration to the max and innovation to the next level? How about taking performance to the max with intelligence built in? Do you demand maximum speed, productivity, security? What about unrestrained creativity and building tomorrow to the max today? Dell Pro Max PCs, performance to the max, powered by NVIDIA Professional Graphics.
Please welcome the moderator, Seppi Motamedi.
Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Seppi Motamedi. I lead product and industry marketing for live media at NVIDIA. I'm so thrilled that you're joining us here today. We've got a lot to cover today. We have AI-driven video analytics. We're going to talk about the foundational technologies that power these platforms. We're going to speak to some of the recent breakthroughs in AI hardware that's making real-time video processing possible, the benefits of deploying these solutions on premises, and how they integrate into studio environments, and the real-world outcomes for customers, and how they can overcome implementation challenges. So there's tons to get through. But first, I'm joined by my wonderful panelists, and I'd love to get them to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Seppi. So I'll start. Logan Lawler, been at Dell Technologies. I lead our Dell Pro Max AI solutions go-to-market, so I get to do fun things like come on this panel and potentially tell you about new products.
I'm Helena Packer. I'm with Bluemoon AI, Chief Creative Officer.
I'm Jason Yang. I co-founded Bluemoon AI with Helena. We work in AI video intelligence, and we're building tools for content analysis, search, editing, analytics for creators.
Outstanding, and I think we have a video that really demonstrates the work that Bluemoon AI does. Let's take a look at that. Outstanding. Yes, that's great. So we just watched a whole series of different tools that kind of comprise your platform. What are some of the foundational technologies that make it up?
Right, so we actually use a mix of AI models for search. We are doing scene analysis, and so that's kind of one model. And then actors, we can identify actors, people. And then we have bespoke models that we've trained ourselves, kind of tuned toward more creator language. So for example, the medium shot, wide shot, to identify those things, like we have bespoke models for that, time of day, and more. And then on the kind of interactive part, we're obviously using an LLM. And yes, and we do all that on-prem using Dell and NVIDIA hardware for that.
So let's actually just pull the thread on that a little bit. Logan, I'm going to put this question to you. What are some of the advancements that we've been seeing in AI hardware specifically that make all of this come to life?
I'm so glad you asked. It's such a great question. But before I get into that specific piece, I like talks like this to be somewhat educational, just not me talking about Dell or NVIDIA, like give you some education as well. So from an AI development standpoint, Jason talked about some computer vision models really to make I hate the word make AI, but to make AI happen, right, you really need three things. There's AI hardware, which GPUs we're going to talk about in a second. You have the middleware, right, which is, think of those as the accelerators between the GPU, ultimately the data. And then you have the software, right, which is the user interface that you're using to connect, like AI Enterprise or NVIDIA Workbench or whatever your software of choice, right? But specifically within GPUs, what is so exciting is, did anyone go to GTC at all or follow anything around GTC? I see a couple hands. So NVIDIA announced, the NVIDIA RTX Blackwell kind of ProViz GPUs for both fixed workstations and mobile workstations, being the Dell Pro Max. And what makes those advancements really happen is a couple of things. One is that with models like Jason's talking about, those ultimately have to be loaded into the VRAM for them to work, right? And you're just limitation size. And fun fact, approximately every 1 billion parameters in a model equals 2 gigabytes of VRAM that you need. Now, that can go up or down, that's fungible, but as a general rule, right? So when you're loading multimodal things, you run out of VRAM very quickly. So the first big advancement within Blackwell is going from 48 gigs to 96 gigs. So essentially doubling the amount of things model-wise, for example, it's Llama 4 now, but Llama 4 405B, in some of the Dell Pro Max workstations, that was specifically limited to servers. Now it can be ultimately loaded on a workstation. The next is kind of the AI tops, right? The ability for you to use tensor cores, that's going up 3x, which makes things run a lot faster. But then the other piece I would be remiss to talk about is Dell Pro Max, right? We redesigned our portfolio to, one, accommodate these 600 watt cards, which are, it's gasoline on a fire when it comes to AI development. But also, I've got a box up here. Is anyone curious what's in the box? Okay, good, because I'm going to show you. So Dell's been around a while, right? And most of our systems will do a lot of different things. Probably most. I've had tons of conversations with customers in our booth in the South Hall, and they use, Dell Pro Max. They've used workstations for a while, but this is our first purpose-built system for AI development. So, and it lights up. It's green. It's awesome. But what is this, right? Here, and this is our new Dell Pro Max GB10. We announced it at GTC, and it's very different than other things within the Dell portfolio. One, it's purpose designed for developers. So what does that mean? So this system is running the first system that Dell's had, which is an NVIDIA kind of system on the chip called Grace Blackwell. It's called Super Chip. It has 288 gigabytes of unified memory. That's a ton in this little box. Second, it runs anyone who does AI development. Most likely you might use Windows, but this also is purpose-built with Linux. The other piece, which is great, is this ties together the entire ecosystem of products where, hey, you can develop, fine-tune here, ultimately push it up to your data center or place of choice, and it all runs completely integrated with the NVIDIA software stack. So,
awesome. I think Logan just fulfilled his dream of standing on stage
honestly,
and holding
I
up
kind of wanted to have one of those moments where you hold it up and everyone cheers. You guys didn't cheer, but that's okay. It's okay.
Like when we were backstage and he showed it to us, I was super geeking out.
Yeah,
over it
it's very cool.
For us on the studio developer side, memory is really king, and we can't just fire up another machine. So having a lot of memory is really important, especially when you're dealing with video. It's a lot of video, high res, 8K, 4K, so memory is super important. I was really excited to see that.
And so, Helena, I want to ask you, what are some of the benefits of deploying your specific solution now on premises?
Oh, well, first off, studios demand it.
Right.
They want it. They're not going to let anything go onto the cloud unless something new happens. So they can save efficiencies, tremendous savings of time, never waiting on queue, to go on the cloud. They control. It's about control. And once you have control of your environment, you can iterate and you can experiment. And you don't have the time to do it if you're uploading and downloading. So this coupled, with AI allows a creative to, try different things, push the art form, and it's really good on the budget.
Right. And Jason, how does your platform being on-prem, handle the large data sets that it gets?
Yeah, so we've been using gracious Dell, working with Dell on using their hardware and NVIDIA hardware. We're using the latest workstation, which is 40 gigs of memory, and sometimes a lot of our tools can fit on the 48, and then we can scale linearly, so I add more cars, things go faster. And it's great on-prem because we, like Helena was saying, we have control. We can manage how the models are loaded on the GPUs. And like I was talking about the data, it's just a lot of data we go through with the video. And for our customers, they like it because they're already used to it in their environment, and they can also do things with graphics if they're not doing full-blown AI processing at the same time.
And I guess maybe a follow-up to that is how you manage video quality and performance. You're using lower resolution, I'm assuming, for the AI processing.
Yeah.
So like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so like I said, we get 4K, we can get 8K from the studios. A lot of the proxies are just HD, so we use the NVIDIA GPUs to downsample the videos to below HD. These models are great that they can handle lower resolution, and if you kind of know how these models work internally, they're kind of crunching it down anyways to give you efficiencies in the processing. And then with that, we store the proxies in our kind of back-end system, and then that way allows us to match back to source. So the way that we designed our system is kind of like a studio pipeline flow. So it's like it seamlessly integrates into the studio environment. You just tell us where the data is, and then we take it from there. We never manipulate the data or anything, and we allow you to match back to the source material with that.
Now, Helena, you had mentioned about studios really requiring this to be on-prem for various reasons. Logan, I'm wondering, as a part of that, what are the local compute and storage requirements for handling this video efficiently?
That's a great question. So before I get into that, let me break down a couple of things. Like I said, I like to be informative in these things. So when you talk about storage, right, there's a couple of key considerations, right? It was Jason and them talking about the amount of data, right? It's the size of data that you want, right? Ultimately, how many terabytes, how many petabytes, how much data are we actually talking about? Kind of consideration one. Next, I'd be remiss is the speed. The speed of access, right? At the end of the day, you have the ability to be on-prem, you have the ability to be in the cloud, but latency becomes an issue, right? Like how quickly can you get that data to kind of ultimately the GPU to do the inference, the training, et cetera. And then honestly, the next piece of that is compute, right? We kind of talked about the 2 gigs of VRAM for one. So that's kind of the question that you need to ask yourself is that with the GPUs, like what models are running, what size, how am I going to quantize them, which floating point precision am I going to run at FP4, which Blackwell is capable of running at, am I going to run at full precision, or am I going to do half? You have to kind of make those decisions, but that kind of ties back to the overall Dell AI factory with NVIDIA, right? Where I think, there's a lot of options in the market, but what I love about Dell and then obviously the partnership with NVIDIA is we can really meet you wherever you're at. It could be as something like with Bluemoon AI where it's like, hey, this works for a workstation, allows us to sandbox, or it can be, hey, I've got so much data, I'm trying to train ultimately huge foundational models, or I'm trying to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and we can scale kind of all the way up to the data center and anywhere in between. But in terms of the compute and storage, it kind of really comes down to a couple of key things. Like I said, how much data are you trying to feed? How quickly do you need to get the data in there? And then ultimately, what are the models and what are you ultimately doing with it? But that's, like I said, sandboxing, you're thinking Dell Pro Max, you're thinking kind of the GB10. Ultimately, you're training huge foundational models, you're talking PowerEdge 9680 servers with H100s, H200s.
And the videos, it's not just about resolution, it's bitrate. So the stuff you're getting from the studios, they're just huge files. And if you're getting dailies, you're just getting a lot of it at you all the time. So it's a combination of that.
And then how might something like this be integrated within a studio environment?
So overall, pretty simply, to be honest, and I'll let you guys talk about your specific application, but overall, this is not fundamentally really change, hardware infrastructure to add AI to it, right? You need to have some, controls, policies, that type of stuff, but we're not saying by implementing AI or doing any sort of, AI application to accelerate workflows, you're not introducing something that's completely foreign, right? You've been using GPUs for rendering, for all the time. You're just adding another piece into your infrastructure. The only thing I will add, and it was interesting, Jason and I were talking about this before, is something like this with the GB10 runs specifically with Linux. And for example, if you have someone who is, let's say, a AI developer, but they're also using Adobe Photoshop, probably not the system for them, because Adobe Photoshop and Creative Cloud doesn't run on Linux. But if you have someone who's purely an AI developer, this is a great system. So minus those two things, it's very turnkey to integrate it into any studio workflow because it's already there.
Great. Does anyone have anything else they want to add?
Oh, you want, so,
Sure, yeah.
yeah, so when you change a pipeline, it's a very big thing. So we try to minimize that disruption as much as possible. So I was saying before, the studios can have their own existing data structures, NAS, wherever they do their storage. We just point to that, and then we have an on-prem system, whether it's a workstation or server or whatnot, and then we just interface with that, and then the users can talk to our hardware to do their searches, their editing, whatnot. We also plug into existing tools, so we have plugins for Premiere, and so while you're in your workflows, you just kind of go into our system, do what you need to do, whether it's the search or the edit, and then we let you drop the content into Premiere, or we'll generate a timeline, if it's an edit, for example. So we're trying to make this so it's like it lets you plug directly into an existing pipeline, and you don't have to do a lot of work or hurdles to integrate.
You don't want to have to change a facility's the way they work, the way they think, how an artist thinks. You want to aid them, and this is to support them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Helena, you're using NVIDIA for for AI inference. You're using it for training, decoding, transcoding within your platform. How are you doing that?
How are we using AI for that?
NVIDIA AI in particular, yeah.
How'd you do that?
Oh yeah, so obviously we're using the NVIDIA GPUs to do the transcoding. So we're decode, encode our kind of preview files. So transcoded from the source to that. We're using NVIDIA GPUs for the inference. So in our tools, we have kind of like metadata that we load into GPUs, and we can service many users at the same time using the GPU. And then for training, so in our roadmap, all of these models are kind of like fixed at this point. So we want to let the users, especially when it's on-prem, right, and they control the data. So once we deploy, we don't really have too much access on what users are doing because it's on-prem. So we are developing a system basically, is like let users, as they create new content, so think the next monster, next creature that need to sift and search and identify in their system, let them train new models locally, using the hardware they have, and integrate that into the existing models on our platform, so they have control of everything they're doing. So they don't have to come to us and say, I have this new thing, can you train it? That's like, no, we have a system, it's like, you do it yourself, it's your content, you don't have to worry about ever leaving the studio, which is pretty important for them.
One thing to add, the way we're structuring the AI rollout is we are doing, imagine a house being built on a very firm foundation, which is our AI search. So you're searching on all these parameters as a human would search. You're looking at the video and you're seeing the sentiment and you're seeing how they speak and searching semantically, and you're searching by concept. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, that enables you to build the edit on top. And the edit will now do an AI edit because it's understanding the video, and you're giving it instructions, you are, as the artist, as the editor, with certain heuristics that allow you to get where you need to go, what the shots should be like. But you're also telling it, I want the edit to be funny. And it can understand it's funny, or it can understand, because it's understanding sentiment from funny to sad, and it will understand that concept. And then when you start integrating the analytics, which we are now doing, you're understanding your market and how to get your product to market in an efficient way to the right people.
Yeah, to add to that, there's kind of like the boring kind of understanding what's going on, the action. So for example, the car is moving left to right on the screen. So those are the basic things we can do, but as Helena was saying, when we get to the analytics, it's more like the human emotion, or trying to understand how a human would react to what they're seeing on the screen, more than, hey, there's a car on the screen, but it's like, oh, that's an awesome, action shot, or Tom Cruise jumping off the cliff. Like, that's really exciting. So we're trying to incorporate that into the AI.
And so are there like really specific strategies that you're utilizing to train the models to incorporate things like that?
Yeah, so we're trying to make it as human kind of friendly as possible. So for example, when we're trying to do the very specific new item training, we're just trying to do you circle it, label a little bit, do it for a few scenes, and then kind of click, and then it runs through, and then now it's part of the system. So we're just trying to make it as user-friendly as possible. And I'm more from the engineering side, so these technologies are, they're super hot, and we're all talking about them, but they're still rather new, even on the engineering side. So we're all together just trying to figure out this kind of brave new world we're in. And it's great having a partner like Helena on the creative side, so we can work together. It's like, this is kind of what the traditional way has been doing. How can we incorporate the new ways? So there's just a lot of collaboration between technology and entertainment to kind of figure out how to incorporate these new AI technologies into these workflows.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, of course.
It's, when you come up as an artist in the industry, you realize, and this is, for people who are, sitting at home on their kitchen table too, there's a flow to it. You get into a zone. And our AI is trying to keep you in the creative zone. And that's what AI does in general, because it's taking away a lot of the mundane tasks that drive you crazy, what you named a file, and it's searching by how you think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like, is 30 minutes of setting up like a Photoshop or whatever project like worth spending the time on? You want to be creative as much as possible. So with AI, it should let you be in the creative zone, do kind of the mundane tasks that you don't want to do. We work with someone who they are identifying clappers, right, and doing that sync. It's like, should I be spending half an hour doing that where I should be doing the editing? So we're trying to be more of an assistant to content creators, and we always feel that we just want artists to be artists and not be in this kind of like production, manufacturing workflow that it seems to be ending up, and we just want them to be more just creative.
And Logan, there are so many different tools that we provide for developers who are looking to build all kinds of solutions like this. There are so many partners out there that are building solutions that help artists, help creators, help studios. Can you go through what some of those are?
Well, how long do we have?
We have some time.
Okay. No, I'll keep it simple, right? And I'll tell kind of a personal story. And I'm not ashamed to admit it either, is, I've been worked at Dell for quite a while. I am not the most technical person, but about, a year ago, I moved into this, the AI role for Dell Pro Max. So required me to learn a little bit about AI, and it seems really scary. I think before I get into the tools, I want everyone to walk away with this, is that it's not as scary to get started as you think it might be. It's really just the first step, and I'll give you a great one to start with, and I hope you punch this into your phone and download it afterwards, but is NVIDIA AI Workbench. Just go to Google, type in NVIDIA AI Workbench. Very easy to install, the instructions are there, but it is a very easily, I won't say guardrail, but let's say step-by-step way to go do tons of different workflows, right? One is creating a RAG chatbot where you can put in your data, ultimately search it, makes it easy to go kind of find stuff. Two, you can do like a PDF to podcast. You can, fine tune a model. It really guides you through it, and it doesn't require a bunch of quote unquote technical expertise, right? If you wanted to kind of take a step up, whether it's through Dell or NVIDIA, we have Dell as Dell Validated Designs, and NVIDIA has Blueprints, where it's literally the reference architecture that tells you, hey, I want to go build a digital assistant. I want to go build a digital twin that'll walk you through how to do that. That a little bit more complicated. You have to build your own container, Docker, that kind of stuff, but kind of guide you through that. And then ultimately, tool-wise, for enterprise, right? These are very like kind of getting started, right? But AI enterprise, which what I love is something where you can be a developer or someone who's doing AI work, within the enterprise, can take a system like the GB10 or RT2 or whatever it is, ultimately do that work, sandboxing kind of at the edge on, an NVIDIA RTX Blackwell card, and then ultimately push it to the data center or their place of choice for deployment and inference. So there are tons of choices out there in terms of tools that you can use. I would tell you kind of the big thing that I've learned is, actually, I'm going to pose a question. Show of hands, how many people have said, hey, we need to go train our own model, or we need to ultimately go build something very bespoke? I saw a couple of hands. I would say, yes, you might have to do that, but before doing that, there's probably someone very similar who's went down that same path as you, that you can then leverage that work. So instead of trying to build a bespoke tool or build something just specifically for you, go out and look and see what's available. See if that'll work for you, then kind of go down the path. But there are so many tools out there that you can use. My suggestion would be kind of think about the end use case of what do I want to accomplish. Don't start with the tool. Start with the use case and kind of work backwards of what problem I'm trying to solve, and then back into whatever tool you use would be my recommendation.
And to pick, it's like the community is large.
It is.
We're all working on this together. It's a lot of open technology, so if you want to do like train your own model and you kind of get stuck, there's tons of people online working on the same thing that you can ask, and it's a huge community, and we're all really supportive of each other, trying to advance this.
It reminds me when I got into visual effects, it was like a bit of the Wild West back in the day, and it's a lot of fun, and it was before things became a little bit more structured and corporate, and I think that's where AI is now. I mean, it's just a lot of interactivity, and people are very open with each other.
And, thinking through, okay, so there are all of these tools for development, but then at some point you need to deploy. And then that brings out the question of scalability. How easy is it to scale solutions that are built using these tools?
Well, good question. So at the end of the day, right, we kind of talked about the Dell AI factor with NVIDIA, but I think we're well positioned to do that, right? Whether it's from kind of the desk side to ultimately the data center or whatever. I think the bigger question in terms of deployment is having the right people and the resources, right? And this is something, and I will admit, I'm not a creative. I've never worked in the creative industry, but I'll tell you about a couple of one-off programs that I've done and things that I've done that's been very creative. But my point is that when it comes to deployment, the technology is there to ultimately do that, right? Whether, NVIDIA graphics cards, Dell servers, Dell Pro Max workstations, all of it is there. But when it comes to deployment where I've seen things kind of fail, it's not on the hardware side or the scalability side, it's the alignment between the creatives and the business. And that is the big thing that I see slow down projects from the start, because the business will run out and say, hey, let's do this, let's go optimize, let's save people a bunch of time, and the creatives aren't necessarily involved in the process, or the end user using it isn't involved in the process, and then they're like, why did you just go do this? Like, this is not useful to me. And that would be another big takeaway that I would give, is as you kind of march down your AI journey, whether you're ultimately at the beginning stages or you're a little bit more advanced, and I'll tell you, I love telling stories. I love telling stories, but within Dell, and this is a great one, is we have a sales chat, and the use case of this chat is how many times have you, all of you, been in a situation where you needed the answer to something, you knew the answer exists somewhere within your corporate infrastructure, but you didn't know who to talk to and you didn't know where to get the answer, but you knew it was out there, right? That's what sales chat's for our frontline salespeople. So our sales department basically built a sales chat. They did not include myself from product group. So when that was launched, they're like, hey, this is missing. Like, this data is missing. I was like, well, hey, you should have probably included us, right? And this was a while ago when we launched this, but that's a perfect example of the business requirement and then the ultimate stakeholders getting aligned. That would be the big takeaway, which will really accelerate your journey.
I think what's also funny, just kind of piggybacking out of that, so we deploy an LLM for our tools, and then, you know, I use ChatGPT too, and then one day I was like, wait, I could just use the LLM that I already deployed internally instead of going out online. And so there's multiple use cases where, like, I've deployed this LLM for, you know, just for the creatives, but that could also be used for other tasks inside the studio in an enterprise somewhere. So it's really kind of fun, like, playing with these like models as like jigsaw puzzles. Like, oh, I could use that with that, and especially now with the agents, it's the hot thing. Like, oh, now I have this model and this compute available that I'm using here. Maybe I can deploy other things on the compute. So it's a really exciting time.
Can I add to that? So we deployed our search tool, and we thought it would be mostly used as a pre-edit tool, where you just start binning everything and categorizing it in preparation for the edit. But then, you know, the lead editor sat down and immediately took to it and started using it interactively as a conceptual tool. Because as he was editing, he was like, well, you know, this would be a nice moment for, you know, a magic moment to happen. Is it in the footage? I don't remember. Let's find out. And it was really heartening to see it immediately used creatively.
And so how do you think that these sorts of tools play with traditional technologies that are inside these studios?
Well, I've had to deal with that for a very long time. You need to integrate with them. AI is only so far along. So you can deploy the technologies that work best. But you have to use the other technologies. For example, you could do a deep fake, but you would have to stick it on a CG body. So you're integrating two different pipelines. So it has to integrate within the pipeline. Any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's just very carefully. And I would say that just because this is very experimental, and we've done it, you know, even before this experimental stuff, but as you know, you guys, you still have things you got to make and a deadline to hit, right? So, yeah, so you guys expect things to be predictable, editable, you can regenerate to whatever what you generated before, so that's why it's like, it's very careful how we integrate these. So it's not some kind of science experiment. There's a great community building kind of snap of your finger and you get a cool movie, and that's pretty awesome. But for kind of at the professional level, it's, you know, I don't think you want to be there. So our focus is more like practical. So it's like these things will work, and it'll work in your pipeline. It'll make you more efficient. But we're not going to say it's like it's snap of a finger and everything's magic and it can do everything. We're not quite there yet. I'm not a good predictor of when that will happen, but I still believe it's going to be humans in the loop, human interacting with these things. It's never going to be snap of a finger. So yeah, so it's like very careful is what I would say.
And you're going to see a lot more artists adapting, because ultimately for an artist, if it's working and, you know, they feel that it's dependable, they can repeat it, it works within their pipeline, they'll gravitate to it immediately, because, you know, everything is a tool in the hands of an artist. They're going to just grab it and use it because it'll speed up their creativity and they'll get to their deadline, all of that.
Yeah, let me add one thing, and is, you know, once again, not creative, but where I've seen, or I think AI will kind of insert itself most at first, is within the tools that you use on kind of a day-to-day basis, right? Which I think was very smart on your guys' behalf. That's why we work together. But to get within Adobe, right? Because nobody wants an additional standalone tool. Nobody wants to add another login or license or anything like that. And with the traditional, ISVs like the independent or software vendors, whether it be Adobe or DaVinci Resolve, it doesn't matter. Any of them that you would use across the pipeline, you're going to see that, I think, proliferate first, like where you'll see AI, color correction, small changes, but as time goes on, there will be more standalone tools. There'll be more, kind of maybe outside new additions to the pipeline, depending on how things go. But I think that is where the first, when I say mass adoption will happen, is that within the current system that you're already in, the workflow you're already in.
That's why we went to these kind of foundational tools. Because after working with generative AI and trying to integrate it, we could easily see that all these tools didn't exist that supported the whole project, like search, like preliminary edit.
And so if that's like the initial focus, what does the rollout plan look like from there?
Well, for us, the initial focus is a professional market.
Right.
And then we're hoping to roll out into other areas like enterprise. In terms of the internal pipeline, that AI becomes more and more integrated into every aspect of filmmaking. It's already making its way onto the set. People are using it for audio, every which way.
And
On set, like that's building a small device like that to deploy on set versus honking machines. That's, like I said, when I saw that, I was like, I'm super excited.
I know, you're probably going to try to steal it from me.
I was about to.
And so we're seeing AI, as you mentioned, sort of proliferate in more and more of these different areas within the creative workflow. What does the roadmap for success look like for a customer as they kind of plan this out?
The roadmap for like a client, like a studio, or I think it's going to open up all these new areas of business for them. There's a lot of underserved areas within the industry. They don't get a lot of attention, content that isn't, marketed well because no one can afford to really market it. And again, the iteration. So I think the art form will elevate.
And there's, we're touching on ours in our space. There's so many underserved markets. So for example, restoration, right? Yeah. There's tons of old videos, old home videos out in the world, and studios are not going to spend the money to properly restore everything out there. So you need these types of technologies to bring those costs of restoration down, so we can preserve all this content that's in our history, in our family history. That's exciting. Social media is another one where it's like you have these individual creators who they're not a studio, and so they need help with their editing process, and they actually, you have an iPhone. How many videos you have on an iPhone? So they're generating a lot of content. And then as you go up in the social media, like podcasts now are booming, and they're kind of like mini studios now. A lot of the podcasts are being watched on YouTube, for example. So there's a video component there. So we see this. There's a need because there's a lot of content being generated, and there's just not a lot of tools out there for let them to do this stuff faster. So for our success, we want to see our clients, customers be efficient. We hear about 10x faster. 10x being kind of bandied about all the time, but we've had multiple cases where it's so for example, art edits, it'll take them 2 weeks potentially to go through all the dailies that they get from the studios and just do kind of first passes, whatnot. And just using AI, we can get it down to a day. Just kind of the rough, I'm not saying it's final delivery, but just kind of rough understanding of, I got these 100 videos, what do I have? Then now I know what to do with it. I bring it into my traditional tools, and then now it's all kind of set up in my traditional workflow, and then now start working on it. I can flip between different dailies. Okay, maybe I didn't like that, so I can use a traditional tool like Premiere to do that. Or you can just interactively work with it, because I don't know, I'm not an artist, but I don't know where artists are trained to be like, I want to be a Premiere manipulator, or flame artist, or a nuke, where it's like, I just want to manipulate circuits. I want to draw things, right? I want to, whatever's in my head, get it into the medium. So I think AI will help with that. So you're working with the tools, interact, as if you're talking to your colleague, another artist. It's like, hey, let's collaborate. And when you're a one-man studio, this is kind of helpful. Another example I give, just not to talk about, but is like, I'm not a social media guy. I would love someone to say, hey, there's this cool new technology that everyone's talking about. You should make a video. These are the questions you should ask. I'll help you put that together and then push it out on LinkedIn and whatnot. So that would be really helpful for someone like me who's like not a social media guy, but I can do these other things, and I have things to say, and just kind of help me along to get there.
So I'll add something just a little bit broader. Like, coming from like a business, not creative perspective, is kind of the ultimate metric of success, I guess, if that's what we want to call it, is usage. Because why would you put something in, add another step if it's not saving you time? So I think the real key metric, if you're saying, hey, what does success look like, or how do we know this is successful? Yes, there's time savings and how many people are using the tool, but really ultimately is, if it works, someone will use it. And that's from a business standpoint. But to get there, you have to start working back, is like, well, what problem are we trying to solve? Did we have the right people discussing which tool, which application, where do we insert this in the pipeline, et cetera, et cetera? Do we have the governance in place? Have we worked with legal in the business to understand, like, what can we do, what can we not do, what will our clients let us do, what will they? So there's a lot of steps, but ultimately, for me, the metric of success, time savings, great, all that, but is ultimately, are the people that you have designed this tool, whether it's integrated in ISV, it's standalone application, whatever it is, are people using it? Because that'll tell you how valuable it is. Because if they're not using it, then what's the point?
I will add, though, that the time savings is a pretty significant benefit to receive, particularly within the creative industries, having come from it myself. You can certainly do a whole lot more, on the creativity front if you're, saving time, and a 10x improvement is outstanding to hear, and it probably will go up from here as the models improve and workflows improve, and it all gets better. We've talked quite a bit about opportunities so far. One thing we haven't yet touched on is challenges, and I'm going to assume that there are some challenges to really implementing these solutions. From your experience, what have those challenges been for some of your customers, and how have they been overcome?
Well, adaptation, people adapting to it. There's been some artists are reluctant to embrace AI, and so getting the tool in their hands and seeing how they can work with it and feel comfortable with it and understand the time savings, because you're going to approach projects a bit differently with the tool, and it's great, it's heartening to watch them embrace the tool, because it is furthering their abilities. And of course, the business part is, they have more opportunity. Any challenges?
Any other challenges for deployment?
So like I said, I was just thinking on the engineering side, it's just, definitely hardware has been the challenge, because we work with small studios, and for them to have the budgets for like these, honking. I know you guys want to sell all the big ones, but for them it's like they have their budgets, they have their capabilities of what they can do, and the great things about these workstation cards, not to get into this, but it's like that's kind of like the right form factor for them, that we can fit all these kind of different models, and then there's also, yeah, again, adoption, people are scared. You brought up the legal aspects of it, Logan, it's like there's that as well. But, and as Helena say, I think once people start understanding that this is gonna assist them. It won't be scary. We're not even there that it can create a whole movie instantly. And we ourselves are finding daily challenges in the R&D. So these LLMs, these models, they're not by far done yet. So we do a lot of work in the research to kind of enhance or solve problems on a daily basis. Like, it's not detecting this well. We have to go either train it or even use traditional techniques to kind of fix these problems. So yeah, that's kind of like on a daily basis, those are the things we kind of face.
And once you solve one problem, they find another one for you. So.
Yeah, and then but on top of that, it's like now as we're getting into it, and it's like, oh, it can do this. Now they get excited. Yeah. So it's like, oh, now you can do this. Oh, can you do this next thing? Can you do this next thing? And I have this specific problem. So we also are building kind of bespoke tools outside of kind of what we normally do to integrate into our platform. For our customers on kind of more of a case-by-case basis, because they have a specific problem in their pipeline that can't be addressed elsewhere, and we can kind of combine different technologies to support those problems that other studios may not have, and it's just more kind of their problem that's to solve.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Well, but that trickles down. Once you solve a problem and you think it's isolated, suddenly you're using it for something else, the tech.
Right. Yeah, and that's how we kind of layered all these things. It's like we built the intelligence for the search, and it's like, oh, now that I understand this, I can go do kind of editing because I understand what the content is, and I can build the edit technologies to kind of build a video or something. And so we feel like the edit, the analytics, and kind of the scene understanding, they all work together and feed off each other and kind of build the product up that way.
Yeah, and you can continue layering. You can bring in generative. For example, in editorial, you might need coverage, and there's audio, and all of these things will layer in together.
You know, the one thing that I've seen, and not just within M&E, but just across really all verticals when it comes to AI, I mean, at the end of the day, people aren't refreshing, their primary systems, every year.
No. Things
are accelerating so fast. For example, I mean, how long's Bluemoon been around? Not 10 years, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's something new, and that's, I think, where people, and it's a bit of a hard pill to swallow, because your ITDMs, whoever's doing the hardware purchasing, is like, hey, we need an NVIDIA RTX, I'm just making stuff up, 3000, let's say. But then a year down the road, they find a Bluemoon, and they're like, wow, this would really, really help. But there's inferencing happening on that GPU for the search and summarization where they might need to take a step up. So I would say, and this is my perspective, is that's where I've seen a lot of, I wouldn't say challenges, but some failures, right? Because you're trying to just put too much on a GPU. So if you're thinking about going down, you're doing a refresh or whatever it is, think about, hey, are we gonna explore AI in the next, whatever your refresh cycle is, 3 to 5 years, doesn't matter. Are we gonna explore it during that time? If the answer is yes, think about what you've purchased before, do one tick up. Do a small tick up so you can kind of future-proof yourself versus, I mean, I don't know what's worse, like, hey, this would be great, everyone's so excited. Oh my gosh, we bought a bunch of mobiles and these GPUs are not, you can't swap them out after point of sale. Man, we have to buy all new computers. It's terrible. Yeah, you don't want that.
Yeah, or like we've recommended exactly that. Those maybe buy a 490, a 4020. It's really, for us, we're looking at the memory. So it's like you can get a 4090, 24 gigs, but then we recommend, if you want to future-proof yourself as these larger models come in, or the ginormous models, but that you can quantize down, we recommend like go to the 48 gigs or whatnot. It's like you can future-proof yourself there. And as these new models come in, they'll run. You don't have to worry about it. And like you said, you don't really refresh these things that often, so you'll last a while just kind of on that amount of memory. And like I said, for us, we're really looking at the memory. with all the video and models we have to load.
And speaking of future-proofing, and I see we have Future of Media in the title of our session, what do you think future workflows are going to be looking like?
They're going to involve AI strongly. I mean, the workflow, well, AI is going to affect every aspect of the workflow from the time, from set to completion. And it's going to bring everything together where there's not such a distinction between post-production and production. You're going to see a more organic blend because of AI.
I get to make my big prediction now?
Yeah, Logan, it's big prediction time. Let's go.
All right. This is, I wouldn't say a big prediction, but my prediction is that just within kind of the M&E space, the creator space, right, there has been a bit of resistance to any sort of generative AI. I mean, not all, but some, right? And I totally get it. I understand where those people are coming from. But there are other aspects of AI and like kind of new phase of AI where we're entering, show of hands, agentic AI, where I think agentic will be probably faster adopted than generative. And for those who don't know, quick fun fact, agentic, think of generative as creating video, audio, images, whatever. Agentic is AI doing something in another system on your behalf. So for example, I have a one-on-one with my boss. He needed to cancel because he's traveling. Instead of me going to Outlook, finding a slot, rescheduling, literally just being able to say, hey, reschedule with Ryan one-on-one, the next slot available, boom. So agentic, and I think that time savings piece, I think will be more, adopted pretty quickly because that does eliminate, at the end of the day, the stuff that we all have to do, which, who likes scheduling meetings? I don't. I don't think anybody does. I think agentic will take off very quickly, and then who knows what the next physical is. Is it physical AI? Who knows? We'll see. But I think agentic will, in the next year, be dominating the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. Yeah, it's like assisted. So we're going to have like very practical AIs to piggyback your examples, not just emails. And I'm not an expert, but I'll use AI to help me figure out what buttons to press on Photoshop, right? So instead of asking it, how do I do this? It just have it do it for me. Use the different workflows, use the different tools, bringing multiple tools together, and then the agent itself will create the flow, do the work, and give me a result. So right now we're in I have to go figure out, but the AI is a great assistant for me to kind of figure out how to do the work. And then with the agentic behavior, now it'll do the work. And so I think it's going to be kind of these practical use cases. You can always go generative, and there's a lot of great examples out there in generative. And it's fun, cool, social media, and all that. I don't know. I don't think we're that close where it's like whole TV shows gonna be made that way. So right now in the kind of near-term workflows, it's gonna be more like an assisted AI assistant.
Well, I can't believe it. We've made it to our very last question, which is where can attendees see demonstrations of what's possible today and maybe learn more about what's to come?
Well, we'll start. If you want to make about a 20-minute hike over to the South Hall, you can come by the Dell booth. Got plenty of demos. The next is you can always go to dell.com/Dell AI Factory with NVIDIA. Tons of demos, use cases, the Dell validated designs. You can find the GB10 for pre-sale, which we're taking pre-sale orders on it. Or if you are, if you are a Dell house and you have a Dell account manager, simply reach out to them. We have them able to give you any kind of demo. Of course, at the end of the day, you can come up and talk to me after. I can show you whatever you'd like to see. So,
just reach out to us. We'll give you a demo personally.
Perfect. And we have the QR codes there for anyone wanting to visit those sites. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. It was wonderful to have you. Huge thanks to our panelists, and we hope you had a fabulous NAB. Thank you.
Thank you.